The Strait of Hormuz is a geographic bottleneck just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. This single corridor handles 20% of the world's oil transit every day. To force Iran's economy to a standstill, President Trump declared a total naval blockade, attempting to shut down this transit route entirely. The Navy deployed a wolf pack strategy to enforce the order, a fleet of guided missile destroyers patrolling alongside autonomous robot submarines designed to lock down every inch of the water. Iran countered with a swarm strategy. Instead of large warships, they deployed hundreds of small, fast-moving Mosquito Boats to harass and overwhelm the American perimeter. The U.S. responded from the air, using A-10 Thunderbolts and Apache helicopters to sweep the surface and turn the strait into a monitored kill box. But even with this level of military hardware concentrated in one spot, the blockade is failing. Chinese oil tankers are ignoring the American warnings and passing right through the Gulf, continuing their trade with Iran as if the warships weren't there. A physical blockade only works if your rivals fear the consequences of breaking it. In Hormuz, that fear has vanished. Enforcing a global trade freeze requires a unified front. But while the Navy patrolled the Gulf, the administration's rhetoric was fracturing the diplomatic coalition at home. The tensions spilled into the public sphere when President Trump engaged in a public dispute with Pope Leo and the Vatican over the ethics of the escalating conflict. This triggered an immediate reaction in Rome. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni publicly rejected the U.S. stance, stating that the administration's approach to religious institutions was unacceptable. The friction spread to Paris. Following personal insults directed at Emmanuel Macron, France officially withdrew its military support, refusing to send French ships to assist the American blockade. This lack of consensus reached a breaking point when NATO formally declined to participate in the Hormuz operations. Without the support of France or the NATO alliance, the U.S. is left attempting to police the world's most volatile shipping lane entirely on its own. As the American coalition frayed, Beijing moved to secure its own interests through a mix of covert data sharing and overt diplomacy. On the covert side, China is using its advanced satellite network to provide real-time targeting data directly to Iranian military units. This intelligence allows Iranian batteries to bypass American defenses and accurately strike military installations across the region. Overtly, Xi Jinping is hosting a series of summits in Beijing, bringing together leaders from Spain, Vietnam, and Russia to establish a unified opposition to the conflict. Xi has framed this coalition as a move toward true multilateralism, arguing against the unilateral use of naval power to dictate global trade. The proof is in the ports. Indian and Chinese vessels are moving through the Gulf unimpeded, exempt from Iranian tolls and undeterred by the American fleet. China is underwriting a parallel global economic system, ensuring its energy needs are met, regardless of the orders coming out of Washington. Iran is paying a massive domestic price for this defiance. The Iranian rial has collapsed under hyperinflation, falling to a value of 1.5 million rial per US dollar, yet the government remains in place. The economic pressure that once forced nations to the negotiating table is no longer a decisive weapon. President Trump has threatened to retaliate with 50% tariffs on Chinese goods to punish Beijing for bypassing the blockade. Beijing's response was a simple promise of immediate, identical counter-tariffs, treating the American economic threat as a manageable cost of doing business. This lack of leverage is being noticed by allies and rivals alike. The threat of an American naval or economic freeze no longer carries its historic weight. For 80 years, the U.S. Navy dictated the rules of the world's oceans. In the Strait of Hormuz, we are seeing that naval presence is no longer enough to control global trade. While the fighting continues in the Middle East, the strategic outcome is clear. Beijing has demonstrated that it can now neutralize a superpower blockade through its own economic and satellite-backed diplomacy.